I'm making a video today to address an issue that I think is really important. It's something that I know I'm going to get a lot of pushback on by certain people, and it is not an issue that people like to be quiet about. It makes people very angry, but it's something that I have seen negatively impact the church in profound ways, so I do want to discuss it, and that is the topic of QAnon. Now, let me just start this by saying that, one, I'm not a political commentator. I have no desire to be a political commentator whatsoever. I am a theologian. I have no desire to tell you who to vote for or what legislation should pass on all sorts of issues, my thoughts on political events, and those kinds of things. It's just not, it's not my role. It's not my calling. God has called other individuals into those places who do have that vocation, and they are more knowledgeable than I am on most of those issues. So those are your sources there, not me. But nonetheless, as one who is a theologian and who speaks to the church, there are times where various ideas and political ideologies and conspiracies and those kinds of things can impact what's going on in the life of the local church and the witness of the church as a whole. And I've spoken out on numerous issues. This includes issues on the left and the right. I've spoken about intersectionality on the left. I've spoken about modern gender theory. I've spoken about critical theory and how I think those things have harmed the church and the way they've been implemented by some in the left in the church. And I am similarly critical of the right on various issues. I've spoken out against kinism. I've spoken out against the alt-right. And now I'm going to be speaking about QAnon. So this isn't a partisan thing. The second thing that I want to mention, because I know that I'm going to get these comments, that I just listen to whatever the media says and this kind of stuff. My information about QAnon, none of it has come from the media. It's come from the QAnon folks themselves. It's come from the talking heads of QAnon. It's come from reading Q's posts. It's come from reading posts by those who support it. I'm not getting my information from critics. I have actually hardly read anything from critics of QAnon, to be honest. I have read more recently some things of personal stories of how QAnon, within families has torn apart families and things like that from people who have seen that firsthand. But that was not my source of information. The reason why I have followed this issue in any way whatsoever is because I've seen it. The ideas of Q, the major talking heads of the QAnon movement, I've seen that stuff shared by Christians, theologically minded Christians. I've seen Christians yell at those who don't agree with these conspiracies. I've seen it take over people's lives. So it seems that their sole concern is the validity of their conspiracy theory and trying to prove that to everyone else. And it's extremely harmful. It's extremely harmful to the church. So just so you're aware of kind of my background on some of these conspiracy theory issues, because I've mentioned before, I'm not a fan of conspiracy theories. I don't say this out of not knowing anything about them. I actually know a lot about conspiracy theories. I watched every Alex Jones documentary till the Obama deception, whatever year that was. I was really interested in this stuff when I was younger. I've spent hours watching flat Earth documentaries. I've watched lectures of David Icke. I've even read one of David Icke's books defending that people are shape-shifting reptiles. I've read on the Montauk Project, and nearly every major conspiracy that you can name, I have done a bit of reading on, and from proponents, not from opponents. The reason for that is because I've seen this kind of stuff infiltrate the church in so many ways, and I've met so many in the church that buy into these ideas that I just think it's important to be well informed on it. And so I am informed on it, and I do that so that when I encounter people who I think are dangerously into these things to the point that all they talk about is whatever their pet conspiracy theory is, that I could talk to them about it. And I've seen this kind of stuff take over people's lives, and churches are dividing over it, and people are cutting off all of their Christian friends and family because they don't buy into whatever conspiracy they're currently into. And I've seen that with QAnon. So let me just give a few reasons why I think the QAnon conspiracy is dangerous. And the first of those is, just as Christians, we should be people of truth. We should care about the truth. We should deeply care about the truth. And to care about the truth does not mean we just believe whatever the media says, but it also doesn't mean that we claim what anyone says on the internet, including someone who claims to be a government operative or whatever. What I see is people who recognize errors in the media, and certainly there's bias in the media. I mean, I don't know how that can be denied. I mean, that's just a fact. But people see that and then grab onto their own alternate media and say, well, whatever the alternate media says, that is true. And a lack of critical thinking in the church is an extremely dangerous thing. Christians are to be people of truth. We claim that Christ is the truth. And if we are going to spread ideas that simply are not verified, that are not verified beyond a few individuals who claim that they have secret word from this person or that person, which I've seen no proof of from these particular individuals, we're not being faithful to the truth. I mean, there's so much in Scripture, especially if you read the book of Proverbs, that talks about being slow to speak. And if it comes to an issue like accusing our top leaders in our government of being literal cannibals, pedophiles, trying to, sacrificing children, all of these kinds of just wild claims, you can't make a claim like that if you are not 100% sure that these things are the case. And to accuse someone of a crime that is so horrific, you better know what you're talking about and have absolute proof. And going on message boards online and hearing individuals on YouTube who just claim these things is not enough. So the second thing that I want to add to that, reason why I think this is problematic, is it's really harmful to your witness as a Christian. If you proclaim Christ and at the same time proclaim things that are completely falsifiable, things that are just completely untrue, whatever conspiracy it may be, whether it's flat earth or various things related to QAnon, it can harm the witness to the truth, because people will look at you and say, oh, those Christians are also those people who believe that X, Y, and Z. It's extremely harmful to our witness in that way. A third thing that I would say is that simply, if you look at the leaders, like a lot of these outspoken individuals, and I'll just, I'll give you some names because I haven't named names at this point. Of course, Q being one, and we could talk about the validity of Q's claims or not. But Simon Parks, Charlie Ward are two that I've seen quite a bit of people sharing things after the inauguration, because there are all these claims that there's still hope that Trump is going to win because the inauguration was fake and all of this stuff. And a lot of the claims that I've seen honestly can be debunked like immediately without much research whatsoever. Which is one of the problems. So let me give you an example. When people started saying that, Biden was signing blank executive orders because he's in a Hollywood studio. There are no executive orders. He can't really sign them because he's not president. If you look at the video of him signing executive orders, it looks like it's a blank page. Well, of course it looks like it's a blank page because of the way the sun is coming through the window. And if you see other angles, it's very clear that there are words written on the page. I mean, this is just one example, but this kind of stuff happens often with those who are adherents to the QAnon conspiracy theories. Is there's just, you hear information and share it right away. And as much as they talk about doing research by, watching videos and reading message boards, they really often don't do research before they make these exaggerated claims. It ends up being this comprehensive worldview, which is another problem, right? It ends up being this comprehensive worldview that really determines how you look at everything in the world. And in that way, I find this very dangerous, is it replaces Christ as your Christianity. It replaces Christ as the lens through which you view the world. And I've seen this over and over again, because what happens with a lot of these conspiracies, especially ones that are, that are so broad, like QAnon. But I see this with the flat earth theories as well, and ideas about NASA and things like that. I mean, you can look at David Icke and the shape-shifting reptile stuff too. But what it does is it presents an overarching narrative of what is wrong with the world, how to heal the world, and what we are looking forward to in the future. So it has its own doctrine of sin, doctrine of redemption, and then doctrine of eschatology. It has its own eschatology, this what we're looking forward to in the future. So that's very apparent in QAnon. Of course, what is the sin? The sin problem is that there are these elite, this elite cabal, cannibals, all these kinds of people that are in positions of power. Well, what is our soteriology? The soteriology, right, the way that we are redeemed, is that Donald Trump takes out the deep state through military action, and then we have this basic eschaton. I mean, if you listen to some of these people talk, the world will be this basic utopia. I've even heard people say there will be one religion in the world. I mean, seriously, after this, and that there will be no divides in the world after this perfect government is set up. The economy is going to be better than it's ever been. And so it is this fraudulent Christianity. It ends up being a fraudulent religion. It has this alternative doctrine of sin and alternative doctrine of religion and alternative eschatology. So that is extremely dangerous for Christians. And I have spoken about a kind of idolatry in that movement. And why I say that is because when you are looking at the major problem in the world as specific people, and if you look at Donald Trump as the one to redeem you from specific people and bring about this utopia, you're putting him in a place that is messianic. I mean, that's really what you're doing. So there certainly is an idolatry there within the QAnon movement. And I don't think it takes long of reading message boards and just looking at what some individuals have to say to make it pretty apparent that is the case. So that's another problem. So the other one that I was going to mention, so I'm going back now, is when you look at some of these individuals, they're really, their teachings are, on the one hand, there are these New Age figures who represent all sorts of alternative spiritualities that are not consistent with Christianity whatsoever. And you see this with the individuals that I mentioned already. Simon Parkes and Charlie Ward are good examples, because there's weird spiritual stuff going on in what they promote, and this is all tied together for them. But then in the Christian world, what you have, those who are supporting this tend to be health and wealth, prosperity gospel preachers on the kind of really extreme end of charismaticism that are being used to promote these ideas. And I don't think it's a coincidence that it is false teaching, that it is those who are buying into false teaching, and these things, that the QAnon stuff is tied with false teaching for many of these people. I don't think that's a coincidence. And as much as the QAnon proponents want to refer to the cabal as satanic, I think the movement of QAnon itself is satanic. I believe it's a demonic movement. Because what does Satan want more than anything else? Well, Satan wants to destroy the church. He wants to divide the church, and he wants to take people's focus off of Christ. And that is precisely what's going on with QAnon. It's dividing people against one another. It's dividing Christians against each other. It's turning people to an attitude of just complete fear and panic about the state of the world. It is turning their eyes off of the kingdom of God onto this earthly kingdom and some hoped for utopia that supposedly is coming, brought about by someone other than Christ himself. It's exactly what the devil wants. And so I honestly don't, I think that it is demonically inspired. I really do. And I think that the evidence is there, because it's exactly what the devil wants. So is Satan active in this? Yes, but not in the way that the QAnon proponents are claiming that he is. And the other thing is just, it's not true. Okay, like I said, we should be people of truth. So this is just expounding on that a little more. What QAnon does is it grabs onto the same kinds of tactics as, said, the Millerites, the early Jehovah's Witnesses. So anyone who's kind of interested sociologically in terms of what's going on here, I would urge you to look back at the history of the Millerite movements. In the 19th century, there were a number of prophecies of the coming of Christ. And prophets claimed that Christ was going to come one day, and he didn't. And then there was another date proclaimed, and there were constantly excuses as to why Christ didn't come by these prophets. And the prophets thrived off of this kind of expectation of Christ's return, of this coming kingdom. And it kept people in expectation and hope that, oh, something better is coming. They're part of something big. They're part of something really important because they're part of this movement. And you see very much a parallel thing occurring with QAnon, which is Q has made numerous prophecies, but numerous claims about what's about to happen: the mass arrests, the arrest of Hillary Clinton, the blackouts that were supposed to happen all over the U.S., the use of the emergency broadcast system. I mean, there have been, and those are the major ones, but there have been little things throughout since 2017 that Q has claimed that just haven't happened. It's false prophecies. Now, what Q has done is taken this tactic of cult leaders in general that they've used. I mean, cult leaders today use this all the time. And I think if you look at the tactics, it's very similar. You see someone like Steve Hassan, who is one of the experts on cults, leading experts on cults today. Probably him and Rick Ross are the two major ones. But Hassan has spoken very explicitly about the connections between QAnon and what he sees in cults. It's a very similar kind of way of thinking and thought pattern and overarching worldview that causes you to look at any evidence as proof that your conspiracy is true or that your cult is right, no matter what. And so Q has been very clever. Whoever Q is, I have no idea who Q is. I'm not going to make any claims as to who that is. I don't know. But whoever that individual is, they've built it into their system so that disinformation is actually part of what they have to do, so that it doesn't matter how many things they get wrong, because if you get all of these things wrong, but one thing right, well, all of the wrong things were just necessary disinformation, and the one thing they get right, well, that's proof that they're telling you the truth, which is very smart. It's a very smart way to do this. Certainly the person who has run this, whoever Q is, knows what they're doing. I mean, they're very intelligent in the way that they are running things. But this is exactly the same tactics that you find in cults. And ultimately, what I predicted is basically what I've seen after the inauguration was there are going to be two groups of people after this. Because everything really hinged on the inauguration. It was by the inauguration, this is the last time that now the cabal can be taken down and Trump can demonstrate who he really is and is taking down the deep state in these ways that they're claiming. Well, the inauguration obviously happened. And beforehand, I said this is going to be exactly the same thing that happens with what was the Great Disappointment in the 19th century, which is there are going to be a number of people who drop off and say, I was fooled the whole time. But there are also going to be a number of people who just believe even more and even harder and make excuses as to why the inauguration didn't happen or why Trump is still going to, come to office. So it's exactly what we saw. I've seen a number of people disillusioned. For a lot of people, this is what they devoted their lives to for the past 3 years. Be patient with those people, be kind, be generous with those people, because it is like losing your faith. I mean, it is like losing your religion. I mean, for a lot of people, this is all they've talked about. This is all they've done with hours in their day being stuck at home at COVID, just researching Q. And all of a sudden, you realize that the whole thing is a farce. It's very difficult to come to terms with something like that. So be patient with people coming out of it. But then there are those other individuals who just, move the goalpost once again. So they've got their excuses. I mean, it took 5 minutes into the inauguration for people to start making excuses. Some of the ones that I saw, and these were serious. These weren't parody things, at least as far as I could tell, because I do know how many satirical parody kind of sites and Twitter accounts and stuff there are. But it at least appeared to be serious. That one person said that they believed that Trump perhaps got surgery to look like Joe Biden. One person then said there was like some psychic transfer of minds or something, which, along with the weird New Age stuff that is often tied to this, it makes sense that people would claim that. Not that it makes sense. It doesn't make any sense. But then immediately it's a Hollywood studio. The inauguration's not real. Biden's actually been arrested, but this was pre-recorded to, okay, wait, Biden is in the White House, except it's really a Hollywood studio. He hasn't been arrested. Trump is really running the government through the military, though. And in Florida, I mean, there are so many different ways to handle this, and even now, the next date of when the storm is coming or whatever, the next date has been nobody can even agree on it. Some are saying it's in March because it's the old date when presidents used to be inaugurated, and Trump is going to be the 19th president because apparently most of the presidents didn't count, and others are saying that it's going to be in April sometime, and others were saying it's going to be on a Tuesday randomly some point this year. Other people were saying it's going to happen by the end of the month. And this is going to keep getting pushed back because no matter what, there are going to be excuses. There are going to be reasons why things had to be pushed off, and they had to be pushed off again. And, you can do this, over and over again, and people will just keep getting drug along to say, well, no, really, it's happening soon. Just hold on, it's happening soon. I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses still do this. That's what that entire religion has relied upon for its existence, is this kind of hope that no, it's coming, but it doesn't come. And that's exactly what the QAnon people are doing, which of course is why Jesus tells us things like, you don't know the day or the hour, so of the end, so don't worry about it. And it doesn't mean as Christians you shouldn't care about what's going on. It doesn't mean you should be happy about everything that's going on in politics. And there is a lot that I'm very worried about with the present administration, but at the same time, I'm part of the kingdom of God. This is the eternal kingdom of Christ. His kingdom will have no end. And whatever happens in our country, and even, whatever evil people are in power, which is kind of what happens when people get in power. I mean, Scripture warns about this. Whatever were to happen, not that I believe in the, explicitly satanic cannibalistic cabal or anything like that. I'd have to see quite a bit of evidence to be convinced that that's a real thing. But even if it were true, ultimately our hope is founded in the eternal kingdom, and to just be concerned day to day about something that we can't do anything about is really to take your eyes off of the greater reality that Christ is on the throne and that he will return and reclaim this world as his own. So I look forward to your comments on this. I know I'll probably get some pushback from Q supporters. Nonetheless, I've tried to handle this as well as I can and with as much grace as I can. But I am deeply concerned about what's going on in the church with this right now. I'm deeply concerned with what I've seen on all different platforms on social media. I'm just deeply concerned with a lot in the world right now. But this is regardless of what you think about all of the things related to Trump or voter fraud or any of that. I'm just leaving all of that aside. I'm not getting into any of that. I have no desire to get into any of those kinds of discussions. Again, that's not my purview. But what I am concerned about is this QAnon movement and how it's harming the church. So thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. God bless.